Until 1960 in England, it was assumed that the majority of people would enter heterosexual marriage, which ideally should last for life. Divorce at that time in Britain was difficult and it was expensive. Homosexuality was viewed as abnormal. Gender was regarded as a predetermined given. Sex and gender were regarded as indivisible. And now, due to the church's silence, to the impotent, uneducated, unengaged Christian community in Britain, the situation in England now has dramatically changed and is dramatically different. Gender is regarded as shaped by behavior and social conditioning, and something that one can choose to modify. Any talk of different roles for men and women is now viewed in Britain as sexist, and it is regarded as immoral to think that any form of sexuality is better or worse than any other. To quote Gene Simmons in the London Sunday Times, he said, quote, "Family is now an elastic term in England, applicable to any number of permutations beyond the married mom and dad and children. Now, there might be a mom and dad, two moms, two dads, no mom, no dad, or multiple combinations of all the above. For many, the old family does not work. For many, the old family does not work." But that doesn't mean they're opting out of it. They're merely reinventing it, end of quote. In 1961 in Britain, 6.3% of children were born outside of marriage. By 2004, 42% of children were born outside of marriage. The total number of marriages, including remarriages in Britain, has fallen by 40% since the early 1970s. And the total number of cohabitating couples, unmarried individuals living together, has risen. Now this is interesting. 52% of cohabitating couples split up within 5 years of the birth of a child, whereas only 8% of couples who were married at the time of the baby's birth split up within 5 years. And so 3.75 million children now in England live apart from one of their biological parents. And 2.5 million children in England now live in single-parent families. And 1.25 million children live in step-families. Now, while the ministers and the church in England were silent, Britain experienced a dramatic landscape social change that literally de-Christianized it in 40 years. And this is exactly where the United States is going because of the lack of believers in our country being salt and light, who are so unengaged in what is happening in government, what is happening in policy, that they can literally do nothing about it. What happened? What were those significant changes that de-Christianized Britain along with this frenzy of legislation? Number one, the destruction of sex roles in society and the impact of radical feminism. Does that sound similar to the United States of America? Do you remember it was Margaret Sanger, the founder of Planned Parenthood, who said, "What is the source of all social, personal dysfunction?" Answer: Christian morality. What could cure the ill suffered by mankind? Sexual liberation. It happened in Britain, and the moral landscape changed. Number two, the sexual revolution. Number three, the breakdown of moral and religious stigmas. Number four, individualism. Individual choice and freedom is regarded as the supreme good. And so each believer should choose their own path of spirituality. There are no absolutes. It is strictly what you think may be right. Now you say, and then number 5, Christianity has become subjective and individualistic. Number 5, Britain experienced a new anti-nuclear family orthodoxy and the rejection of the traditional nuclear family. Now, I know we have a tendency here in our great country to say, well, Jerry, that's Britain and that's not us. But today, ABC News just issued a report, What Makes a Family? Children say many Americans. Brian Powell, a sociology professor at Indiana University, and his team tackled America's evolving definition of family. And in a book-linked study entitled Counted Out, Same-Sex Relation and America's Definitions of Family, and a separate 2010 survey. Between 2003 and 2010, Brian and his team conducted 3 surveys involving more than 2,300 Americans. And the new research released today, quote, we find is that people are moving away from a traditional definition of family, and they're moving toward a modern definition of family, said Powell. That includes a much greater array of living arrangements. They're including a much broader group of people, broader combinations of people as families, end of quote. Indeed, the modern family now comes in many combinations. 83% say that unmarried couples with children are a family. And 60% of Americans in 2010 said that if you considered yourself to be a family, then you are a family. The 5th change of Britain is happening right now in the United States. When it was a new anti-nuclear family orthodoxy, the rejection of a traditional nuclear family, the reconfiguration of the family in Britain included these components. Sex and marriage were disconnected. Marriage and parenting were disconnected. The 1969 Divorce Reform Act allowed divorce on the grounds of irretrievable breakdown, which was purely a subjective standard. Cohabitation was treated equal to marriage. In 1982, the position of children born inside and outside of marriage was equalized in Britain. In 1987, the Family Law Act abolished the status of illegitimacy. And so state financial provision for single parents was extended. And the separation of gender from parenting was extended. What do you mean, Jerry? Well, the 1990-2008 HFE Acts allowed for the provision of fertility treatment to unmarried people and also to people not in heterosexual partnership. Parent is now to be regarded as a gender-neutral term. In 2004, the Gender Recognition Act gave transsexual people the legal right to live in their acquired gender, including the right to marry according to their acquired gender. By 2006, British law had recognized the rights of gay and transsexual people with regard to partnership and parenting. The 6th change, most notable in Britain, was the rejection of compulsory heterosexuality. The new morality was born. Now, let's review. By 1960, when public policy began to be driven by those who challenged traditional family norms in Britain, just as it's being challenged in the United States right now by the very highest office in our land, evangelicals vacated the public square. Between 1960 and 1980, policies which weakened traditional family forms were passed while there was no evangelical Christian opposition strong enough to halt the process. Author John Houghton of the Restoration Movement reflects retrospectively on what happened. Don't miss this now. Quote, "Why the silence? I came to the reluctant conclusion that we did not think it was sufficiently our business at the time. Social conscience was something left to the liberals and modernists. We had not seen that the kingdom of God included a care for God's world. Social and institutional sin was not something we challenged. We live with the results. End of quote. And so the damage had been done, unchallenged at the time, by evangelical Christians. Jerry Johnston, Culture and News Analysis, each week in this segment from 6:40 to 7 p.m., it will be my goal to keep you informed on what is happening in our world and in our nation affecting culture. What are the important news stories of the week that we need to reflect on? And how can we as believers fulfill the role that Jesus gave us to be salt and light in a world of increasing decay? Now, some evangelicals argue, Jerry, just preach the gospel. Don't touch on any social issues. That was the message of Martin Lloyd-Jones. And as great of a preacher as he was, and as much as we cherish his books on the Beatitudes and his great sermons, under his watch and the watch of other ministers, the de-Christianization of Britain took place. And so the track record of the de-Christianization of Britain in just 40 years says no, we cannot repeat their mistake. No. And so the issues I plan to address are ones of importance that you need to hear, and I will use reputable global news sources and allow us to see beyond the bias so often included in the news stories we read. Now remember, a transcript of my Culture and News segment is available for you tonight on my new vlog, www.jerryjohnston.tv. And you can watch archive video stream of this presentation tonight, or tell any friend worldwide every Wednesday night to go to www.jerryjohnston.tv, or go to our homepage, ffc.org, and select the button, Culture and News. And you can archive video stream it there as well. The de-Christianization of Britain clearly tells us that we can't fall asleep at the wheel. We must stay informed, and we must pray for our nation and for our world.